Once upon a time, there was a man who was very, very rich, had a lot of money.
Well, what's rich?
Somebody who's rich has a lot of money. And this man lived thousands of years ago when your money was in the form of gold. So what he had was pots of gold. In fact, he had 3 pots full of gold. And this man, who was very rich, also had 3 servants. The servants worked for him. They did all sorts of jobs for him, like digging the fields, or bringing him meals, or cooking his food, or bringing him a drink, or cleaning his house, those sort of things. That's what servants did. And this man was an important merchant. A merchant is someone who buys and sells things. So sometimes he'd go on trips for a long time and come back. And when he would come back, his servants would be waiting for him with a nice clean bed, with fresh food, fresh clothes, all washed, and a nice clean house. Well, one day the merchant called his 3 servants, and he said to them, "Now, my 3 servants, I want you to listen carefully. I'm going to go away on a very long journey. I will be gone for a very long time to do some business. I'm going to buy and sell things when I'm gone. But while I'm away, I want you 3 to look after my pots of money, my pots of gold. So I'm going to pass to each of you 1 pot of gold coins." Which,
how about a boy could have Jack have no money?
you mean the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, where Jack had no money?
Yeah, and then they could decide to go to the house.
This isn't Jack and the Beanstalk story. This is a story of someone who's got a lot of money, not somebody who's got no money.
But then Jack said you must buy the money from the market, and they went to the house of the man.
Are you saying that he could share the money with Jack?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good idea, but this particular merchant didn't want to share the money with Jack, who wasn't born yet. Jack and the Beanstalk is a story which came many, many years later. This story is thousands of years old. So the rich merchant called his 3 servants and said to the 3 servants, "I'm going to go on a long trip, a long voyage. I'm going to be away for a long time. While I'm away, I'm going to buy and sell things, and I'll be very busy. Now, while I'm away, I want you to look after my money. I have 3 pots full of gold, coins full of gold, and I want you all to look after it and do your best with it. I don't mind what you do, but do with my gold what you think I would have done." Now, each of the 3 servants decided to take their pot of gold and try and do what they thought was best. The first servant decided to lend the gold a little bit to a lot of people with interest. So when they paid him back, they had to give back a little bit more gold than he'd lent them. Lots of people wanted to borrow the gold because they had different ideas, like buy a cow, let the cow have some calves, sell the calves and pay back the original gold. So many people had different ideas. Another person had the idea to borrow some gold, buy some corn to plant a field of corn, and from each seed of corn he'd have a whole head of corn and could make a large profit, then sell the corn and pay back the merchant the initial amount he'd borrowed plus the interest. That was the first servant's idea. The second servant had a different idea. He thought it would be a good idea to try to work with the gold to do a business of his own. And the business idea he had, he thought, maybe I can buy some cows, and the cows will have calves. When the cows have had calves, I can sell the calves and make a big profit for my master. He'll be very happy. And the third servant, thought, well, my master has given us the gold, I must keep it safe. So he dug a very deep hole and buried it in the ground deep down where nobody would find it except him. Now, as things went, the first servant lent out the money to lots and lots of different people, and most of them made a profit and could pay him back with the interest. So even though one or two lost their money due to some misfortune, most of them managed to pay back, and with the interest that was paid back, he had more gold in the pot than when he started. That was the first servant. So he managed to increase the amount of gold. The second servant, unfortunately for him, the cows caught a disease and they all died. So they had no calves to sell, and he lost all of the gold he'd invested, all gone. As for the third servant, well, he didn't do anything. He just left the gold buried in the ground. Now, after a long time, the merchant came back from his voyage, from his trip, and he called his 3 servants and asked them to tell him, "What have you done with my gold?" The first servant explained that he'd lent the gold to lots and lots of different people, a little bit to each one. Some of the people couldn't pay back because their business venture had not worked, but others it had worked very well, and they'd paid him back with interest. So the gold had, even allowing for the ones who couldn't pay back, because of the interest of the ones who could pay back, he had more gold than he'd started. So he handed the pot of gold back to his master with all the profit, which was nearly another pot full of gold. The master was very pleased. "Well done," he said, the master. "You're a good businessman. I shall keep you as my trusted advisor. You have done very well." The second man handed the master an empty pot and said, "Master, I have done wrong. I tried to make a profit for you by buying a field of cows, but they all died of a horrible disease, and I lost all your money. I'm so sorry, master. You must punish me. I'm sad." The master said, "No, I will not punish you. You tried your best to make a profit for me. You made an effort. I'm pleased you made an effort. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but at least you tried. You're forgiven." Then the third servant handed the master the pot of gold that had been buried, with exactly the same number of coins in it as he started. "Here's your gold, master. It's all there." So the master said to him, "And what did you do with my gold when I was away?" "I buried it in the ground, and here it is back, all safe and sound." Now, the master wasn't pleased with this servant, because he said, "I gave you a pot of gold and told you to do what I would do with it. Did you ever see me not working? No. And what did you do? You buried it in the ground and did no work. I'm not happy." And he sent the servant away, dismissed him. He was very unhappy with that servant for not following instructions with the money. And the other 2 servants carried on being his trusted servants and were given many opportunities again. And when they had future opportunities, every time they managed to make some money for the master, who was very happy. And that's this whole story. But there's a moral in the story. And the moral of the story is you have to work. You can't just say, "Oh, I've got some money, I'll bury it in the ground and do nothing." You have to find a way to make your money work. In other words, if you have money, you can lend it out, or you can invest it in a business by buying something to make a profit. And of course, you must work with your hands and your feet and your brain and your head and everything else you've got to help other people, because you're not helping other people eat if you don't do anything. If you just keep all the money dormant, nobody gets to eat because nobody's doing any work. If you lend out, everybody will do some work. Some will make money, some won't. Some will pay back, some won't. But everybody gets to do a job. So that was the moral of the story. Always do something, always work hard.
It's the same story again.
Same one again? The one I just told?
Yes, by your hands.
Well, I don't think I'll tell the whole story, because I'll tell you a quick summary. The master went away on a big trip and told his 3 servants to look after his money, which was 3 pots of gold. One servant decided to lend bits of the gold to lots of different people for different ventures. Everyone had their own idea how to make some money. For example, one man borrowed some money to buy some corn, and with the corn he planted one seed everywhere in his field, all over the place. Everywhere he planted seed, up came a corn stalk with hundreds of seeds on it. So that man made a very large profit because when the seeds grew, he could sell the corn for a lot more than he'd paid for it. So just one cob of corn could make hundreds of cobs of corn. So he made a big profit and could repay back the money he had borrowed, the gold, back to the servant. So the servant had many people like that, all with their own ideas, and made a lot of money for his master. The next one didn't quite do the same thing because he decided to do a whole business venture himself. He decided to buy a field full of cows, and he was hoping that those cows would all have baby calves. And when they had calves, he was hoping to sell the calves and, well, maybe sell the cows and keep the calves, which would grow into cows, and that way make a big profit for his master because the cows would multiply. But that didn't work out because the cows caught a disease and they all died. And the third servant, well, it wasn't a very good idea, but it was keeping the money safe. He just buried the money in a deep hole and told nobody where it was. So it was quite safe. But when the master came back from his voyages, from his journey, he was not happy with the man who buried it in the ground because the man who buried it in the ground had done nothing. He hadn't been thinking about what to do, hadn't used his hands, hadn't used his arms, hadn't used his brain, and hadn't helped anybody, because if people can't have the money, get their hands on the money, they can't buy the corn they need to sow, they can't buy the pigs they need to breed, they can't buy the bricks they need to build houses, they can't do anything. So that man had not helped anybody, hadn't helped the economy, hadn't helped the people around him by not lending the money or not doing anything with it. As for the middle one who'd had the field of cows, at least he tried, even if it didn't work. So the master was quite happy with him. And as for the one who'd lent out the money to lots and lots of people, he'd made a big profit, even though some of the people lost all the money and couldn't repay him. But nevertheless, with the ones who did repay and with the interest he earned on the money, because you lend 3 and get back 4. That's the extra 1 is called interest. I give you 5, you give me back 6. That's how it works. That's called lending. And he was very happy with him because that man had made the economy, the local community, very happy because everyone could borrow money to plant their seeds and things. So the master was very happy with that man. But as for the one who buried the money in the garden, well, he wasn't happy at all. He dismissed him. He told him to go away and never come back. And that's the end of the story. The moral being, you've got to put your money to work when you've got some. Okay, now we finished the story and it's bedtime. Oh, by the way, just to mention, that story is a story out of the Bible. It's called one of the parables told by Jesus. So people who may think it's a bad thing to say lend your money at a profit only need to read the Bible and see what they say about it there. They think that's quite normal.
Daddy, you can listen to the star on your iPhone.
All right. Lay down.